You're a little surprised by my voice, huh?
What am I doing here? Hi there, fruit fly guy.
Hi, welcome, Nicholas Kircher. I'm here standing in for Tommy.
What have you done with Tommy?
Oh, he's fine. I've uploaded him to the cloud.
Do- Oh no. Oh no. This is a disaster. It's like a dystopian future.
So,
Oh, okay. Well then.
today, we're going to talk about how you've taken my mind and uploaded it.
Yes, I did.
All right, let's move on with the gimmick. All right, so I can't continue doing that voice. Hey everyone. So I'm Tommy from Cognitive Wonderland. This is Nicholas Kircher. And we're going to be talking about a news story that you might have seen. And actually, why don't I just start with that news story before I give any additional context? Because that's really, if you don't
Sounds
have
good.
that's probably the most important thing. So, a little while ago, this little article or articles about this little demo broke out everywhere. So what you're seeing is a virtual embodied fruit fly. So this is the fruit fly, and this is its brain. So this is actually a digital model of the fruit fly brain. And you can see it wanders around, it's cleaning its antenna. And that cleaning of antenna is actually based on what's happening in the environment, wanders around, makes its way to some food, and consumes the food. Now, what's cool about this, like it's very basic behavior, but it's actually based off of the actual connectome of a real fruit fly brain. So what you see over here actually is the activity of a model that is actually based off of a fruit fly brain. And so you might have seen news stories about this, and even some of the other articles this company put out about it says stuff like, "We've uploaded a fruit fly. We have a brain upload of fruit fly." So I wanted to like kind of address that a little bit. And the I don't want to end the whole live. I just want to stop sharing. There we go. I almost just ended the whole thing.
Nope, that was it.
So the what I want to do here is just kind of talk through what was actually done. And Nicholas is here because he's actually been working on reproducing some of the same stuff.
That's
So
right.
very cool work, and it's just been over the last like week or so that he's been working on that.
So when I saw this article, or these this article, and then some of the hype come out, I took a look at it, and at first, some of the stuff that I saw, of course, was the hype, and of course, as is tradition, a scientific ish thing occurs, and everyone loses their minds. Um, in this case, there's some cool stuff to it, but there are significant limitations. It's not as, I guess, is not as much progress as I think people probably assumed. And in fact, the folks who put that demo together originally, Eon Systems, they are fairly upfront about it in the company blog posts about, we've taken existing things that are already in the scientific community, and we've just sort of joined them together, kind of found a way to kind of hook them together. However, there's something that's been really annoying me about what these folks have done, and that is that they did not release their code. Anyone that comes out and makes an announcement like this and has a flashy demo, right, and does not release the code, so that, especially in a scientific realm, they don't release the code so that other people can actually, validate what they've done, that annoys the crap out of me, and I just don't want to let it stand. So I've spent the last, say, almost 2 weeks now, just furiously trying to reproduce what they've done. Now I have made some decent progress, and I've made some really interesting discoveries about not only how they've done it, but also um, some some of my own personal realizations. So not scientific discoveries, but just me learning stuff about like what how exactly the fruit fly brain works, and it's actually fascinating. But there's also some things that I learned about the way that Eon Systems did their demo, and there's a few cheats that they're using, a few shortcuts and hacks that didn't feel right to me. So I've also been trying to get around those. So yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
And at the end of this video, by the way, folks, y'all should stick around because I've got something absolutely wild to show you.
Yeah.
Actually, be a world first. So there
Yeah.
you go.
Um, yeah. So I think like the to me the core piece of this whole thing is based off of this like you said it's a bunch of different things kind of stitched together, and they're very upfront about this. I think they say like it's really an integrative thing rather
Mm.
than like a some like big
It's
new
not a new discovery. It's
right. Yeah.
yeah.
But to me the biggest uh piece of this whole thing is this 2024 Nature paper,
Mm.
which is really cool. So what they did is they found, you take so we have the fruit fly brain
Mm.
uh, completely mapped. So we have the
We have
connect.
a few of them actually.
Yeah,
There's a few specimens that have the almost the entire connectome mapped out.
yeah.
Um,
I was going to ask you the one that we have.
mm,
So I know you've been using female
mhm.
pronoun. Is it actually a female
It
fruit?
is a female,
Okay.
so it's a
Okay.
female
Cool.
specimen. The female has way more brain cells than
Oh, yeah.
which is surprising to absolutely nobody. So
So, so anyway, so this 2024 paper. So we have the connectome, and now
mm,
a connectome, like it sounds like, oh, we have the whole brain totally mapped out, like that's everything, right? But like, I've made this point many times before that like just knowing, the neurons and how they're connected doesn't really tell you a lot about the function of the brain
mm,
necessarily.
that's right.
You're leaving out a lot of like the biochemical
Mm,
stuff like we don't have a full understanding of like a single neuron, right? Like
mm,
a lot of stuff at the biochemical level. There's a lot of computations and
mhm,
properties of individual neurons that
mm.
are fully understood. Um,
So with the connectome, in fact, so the connectome that I've been working with and that Eon Systems were working with was put together by a group called Flywire.
mm,
It's the female essentially the cortex of the female fruit fly specimen that they had, um, and what they've done is like they've done a really great job of going through and using a combination of human and automated systems to annotate as much information as they can possibly apply to each and every cell. Now, that might sound like you have a ton of this information that you can then take and then go and put it in a computer and simulate it.
mm,
But, a lot of that detail isn't really useful to computationally simulating the actual neural network. There's only a few bits of information that are particularly useful, especially when doing this computationally. One is, of course, you need to know the connections between one neuron and another. You need to know how strong that connection is, so how many synaptic connections it makes. But also, you need to know a few things about the specific cell type. But not only that, even knowing the cell type, you need to know w- some intricate facts about those cell types. So, like what are its firing thresholds, for example. That's called an activation function in machine learning. So in machine learning, usually the reason why these neural networks can learn complex behaviors is because they are nonlinear. So they don't just do this matrix multiplication between different connections just based on the weights. They also have, like, each neuron has a set of rules that determines when it's going to fire and when it isn't. So it's not just going to receive a signal, go, oh, cool, we're going to multiply it and then send it down. It actually has these sophisticated rules about when it's going to fire. So you need to know that in the biological neural network, because biological neurons will have many, many, many more varieties of activation functions, kind of like that in a biological sense. And so you would need to kind of get in there and record these cell types firing and when they fire, and figure out the rules from that. And we do know some of those things. We just don't really know a lot of them, as far as I can tell. So there's a ton of these little gaps,
Yeah,
but it's kind of cool that you can take what we do have and you can do some things, like you can trace the path from an input sensory neuron through the network, and then it turns up, in some descending neuron chain that then says, extend the proboscis. You want to eat now,
right. Exactly. And so that's basically what this Nature paper did, right? And so like another example of the details left out of the connectome is, like, there's a lot of computation done at the dendrite of
Mhm.
cell, right? So it's not just like, oh, how strong is the connection? It's also like, where are those connections? Because then
Mm.
the signals get combined in different ways, and there's all kinds of complex stuff. But it turns out, so the kind of cool takeaway of this paper is you can kind of
Kind of
like
approximate it.
zoom out a little bit, like not worry too much about all of those fussy details. And if you do that, still, if you stimulate, the neuron that says, "Hey, there's something, you're smelling something sweet right in front of you,"
Mhm.
it turns out that uh, the pathway to, yeah, extend your proboscis, is that how you
Proboscis.
the little, like, straw thing that
Yeah, this.
the fly eats with, it'll just come out because that pathway is just so robust. You don't need
Mm.
to capture all of those pathways. So,
That's
like,
right.
just like kind of having a coarse understanding of the mapping, you can still get out these sensory motor transformations
Mm.
that
That's
happen.
right.
And so they showed this in the Nature paper. They showed, hey, we can get various behaviors. We can get, like, behaviors like, hey, when we have food right in front of it, we can get proboscis to come out when we or the neuron that would control the right.
Mhm.
I'd be a little bit careful here. Or if you smell something on
Mm.
to the left of you, something tasty on the left of you,
Mm.
turn
Yeah.
left neuron. Well, right, and
Mm.
those certain behaviors like that, they were able to see um, a very clean mapping of
Mhm.
stimulate this neuron, and you get the right motor neuron. Um,
That's right.
Now that none of this is complicated behavior, right? Like, if you wanted to do this with, like, an artificial network, it'd be super easy, right?
Oh,
Like, but the fact that you can still get that's preserved in this, like,
mm.
very high level um, model of the fly brain is
Mhm.
impressive, right? It
Yeah.
means that, like, there's a lot of information in that connectome, and so that's why this paper initially was a big deal.
And you also have to remember, a biological neural network is not computationally efficient for classical computers. It is not designed for that. It's actually, like, so much of its computation is based on quantum effects because of chemistry. Like, so much of what a biological neural network does happens at a chemical level with these chemical interactions, and chemistry, of course, is built on top of quantum effects. So in order to simulate the fruit fly, the fruit fly brain, which is in fact just about two-thirds of the actual brain. There's still like a tiny little chunk that is missing from this particular connectome, and I'll get into detail on that in a bit. But just to simulate the 138,000 neurons and roughly 15 million synaptic connections that we're actually simulating, the actual fruit fly brain has about 50 million, but we prune out any that are three connection that are strength of three or fewer. If it's a weak connection, we just sort of prune it out. So we end up with 15 million synaptic connections, and the amount of computational power that requires is absurd. I mean, you know, I am with a modern, this is a modern MacBook Pro. It's fully specced out. It's very very computationally capable piece of processing equipment, right? It's state of the art computer equipment that, I mean, it's still consumer grade, but I could not get it to run at anything past about 0.03% of real time speed, which is just excruciatingly slow. That was the best I could do. But I
It's worth noting, like, we were talking about, like, all of these particulars of neurons that are not captured, like, that we don't even know.
mm,
But, like, the simplification they've done, like, these are just what are called leaky, integrated fire
Leaky integrated fire.
units. So they're, like, super, super, super simplified compared to,
Mm.
like, what a real neuron
Oh,
is.
yeah,
So
they all have basically the same kind of activation.
right.
They don't have there's no real diversity in that sense. And so, again, like you pass in, say, sensory input to a particular ascending neuron structure, and then it just follows the pathway.
Yeah.
And it will just follow and go through, and each thing will fire in turn. You can sometimes I kind of when I'm looking at, like, when I'm running these little simulations and I'm sending in an input and I see it sort of just go out through the network, kind of reminds me a bit of epilepsy, because it's kind of like the fruit fly almost kind of has a bit of that going on, because it's like everything kind of activates.
Mhm.
But it is fascinating to watch. So I did manage to, interestingly enough, replicate some of what they've done, but it's still a work in progress. But I have kind of I've kind of been trying to extend on what they've done, because some of the things that they're not simulating include things like internal state. So they are not simulating hunger and thirst, other internal motivational drives, and in
Right,
fact,
and so let's unpack that a little bit, because I think that might not be obvious. Like, "Oh, you're simulating the brain. Why don't you kind of get,
Mhm.
internal state for free out of that?"
Yeah. Well, that's a really good question. So the reason why you don't get internal state for free is because in a fruit fly, internal state is actually just entirely chemical. So, like hunger, for example, hunger releases peptides, and those peptides change the way the brain responds to certain inputs. Same thing with, so like there's hunger, there's thirst, there's satiety. So those things amplify the gain on particular structures of neurons, so that when you're hungry, your sense of smell becomes intense, and you're just like, oh yes, I'm really attracted to that stimulus, I must go towards it for some reason. I mean, fruit flies don't really have an internal monologue, asking themselves where they should eat for dinner.
Speak for
So
yourself!
I mean, yeah, maybe speaking for myself, I'm just like, I'll go with the simplest thing that'll feed me. But yeah, it is an entirely chemical process. So in order to get that simulation of these internal drives, you have to actually fake it and create these simulated chemical uh, impacts to these uh, these neuron structures. Now, what they've done in their particular demo is they've sort of taken a cheat code and applied it. And the cheat code is to basically stimulate a neuron called P9. P9 says basically, it's this very endpoint neuron that says, move forward, go, right? And if you stimulate that thing is the thing that's supposed to be stimulated when the fly actually decides to move. But they've not given the fly that decision. They've just said, you must move. and it will move forwards. I mean, some of the stuff like the proboscis extension is really interesting because that stuff does seem to be happening in response to these incoming stimuli.
Yeah, wait, let's, take a step back for a second. So, uh, maybe it's worth kind of talking a little bit about some of the different components, that they had to stitch together. We've talked a little bit about, okay, you have this model based on
Mhm.
the connectome. That's just like neurons to neurons. Now, on top of that, they needed to have an actual digital fly body.
Mm.
Uh,
Mm.
turns out they also, to kind of mediate in between those, had a controller, basically
That's
like,
right.
a spinal cord for,
Mhm.
uh, very simplified spinal cord for the neuron, for the brain to
For the
connect.
body, that's right.
And then obviously like an actual digital world, right?
Mm.
So a few different components there. And the way they did it is just like, okay, something happens in the world. We're going to then just stimulate the neurons that are associated with, oh, there being a smell to your left. In the
Yes.
physical world, there's a smell to the left. Let's stimulate that neuron. That's going to go through the connectome. Oh, that stimulated the neuron that we know is, active when, the fly turns left. So
Mhm.
then we're going to, um, just instead of having that actually like directly controlled by the fruit fly brain, it just like kind of sends a command like, okay, turn left. It's like pressing left on the
Sort
control,
of, yeah.
right? Like,
It's I in the da so, in interestingly, so, yeah, they've stitched it together a few things. So, of course, they've taken the Flywire connectome, and then they've stitched it together with something called NeuromechFly.
yeah.
NeuromechFly is very cool, although it is, probably one of the least graphically efficient ways to render a 3D world that I've ever seen in my life. Um, the number of triangles is just insane. And so it's a very heavy piece of like 3D rendering. If you want to render a 3D world, don't use NeuromechFly for your next video game, please. But it's very interesting because in NeuromechFly they've taken a scan of an actual specimen of a fruit fly, and they've modeled that scan into this 3D environment. And uh, so going back to what I said about, we've only got in the Flywire connectome, we've only got like about 2/3 of the full thing. The piece that's missing is something called the ventral nerve cord, which is in the fruit fly is basically like a spinal cord, except it's got so much more responsibility than our spinal cords really do, at least as far as I know. I could be wrong on that. Um, but in the ventral nerve cord is the thing which receives stimuli directly from like specific limbs. So it will receive stimuli like pain and touch and whatnot, and it will come from like a specific leg. And the ventral nerve cord will then sort of bundle this information up together into a simplified form to send it into the cortex, which is the part that we're actually simulating. So the cortex receives these simplified, sort of amalgamated bits of information. So, for example, touch, the cortex only has left and right. It doesn't have like, leg number one. It just has left and right. And it's like, okay, something's touching me to the left. Whoa. And then for commands, for like actually instructing the body, it just sends very simplified commands saying, go forward. And then what happens is the ventral nerve cord takes that and converts that into specific articulations of the legs.
Mm.
And the ventral nerve cord is entirely responsible for controlling the legs. And so basically, what NeuromechFly does is NeuromechFly takes the place of the ventral nerve cord. It essentially simulates that part of the processor that you can sort of swap it in for this
No, I didn't
computational.
realize the full controlling was part
Mhm.
of NeuroMechFly. I thought
Yeah.
that NeuroMechFly was just the model and the physical.
Yeah, no, like NeuromechFly actually it basically lets you send in commands just like you would, from the cortex to the ventral nerve cord.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Go forward, and then NeuroMechFly will simulate the physics of moving the legs.
Yeah.
So that is quite a cool achievement.
Yeah.
But then Eon Systems they took that from the open source community and were able to hook it up with that connectome, and that's kind of how they're then like able to achieve this
Yeah.
full sort of embodied simulation.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about like I want to just before we've talked about a bunch of different like technical details. I want to kind of give a summary of like, hey, what can this do and what can't it do? Because I think now that you have some idea, okay, there's this kind of brain model. It's a bit simplified. It sends commands to this body model with the fly spinal cord
Mm,
that control like then it moves forward or turns left or right. That's all cool. And we talked about one thing that it doesn't have. So it doesn't have internal state. So that's a chemical thing. The model of the brain that we're doing is completely, simplified.
mm.
That all of the chemistry is just abstracted away. So we don't have that. The other really important thing is there's no learning in this, right? So the model is what it is. There's no changing of synaptic weights or anything like that. And so there's no memory, there's no learning. These are like pretty important things
They're
for
pretty
a
important.
biological being. So by taking away all of that chemistry, we've really removed like pretty vital function there.
Hang on, sorry, I just have
Uh,
to close the door.
yeah, no problem. So we can't do that. The range of behaviors that this fly does, right? So it can roam around and it'll move towards food. It'll extend its little proboscis, its little mouth
Mhm.
straw thing,
The mouth straw.
the mouth straw. I feel like that must be how they actually talk about it. Um, and so it doesn't do things like it doesn't fly. So that's one big thing missing.
That's
But like
another big thing.
mating together, I don't know how complicated that behavior is. But they don't know social behaviors, so like mating and aggression
Mm.
stuff like that. Avoidance, they kind of like they said they tested. I think the
Looming stimulus.
neighbor had it right, so
Mm.
it'll respond to a looming stimulus.
Mhm.
But that's not modeled in the actual behaviors of the when they kind of hooked this all together.
Yeah, they
Uh,
didn't show that in the
so
demo.
it's just like a couple of like very simple behaviors that they managed to get out, which is really cool. But
Mm.
it's definitely like very far from the full range of
Mm.
complicated behaviors that you would see in an actual fruit fly, where there's
Right.
uh, decisions being made between, hey, do I in this particular situation, do I go for the food or
Or
try to
do I
make
fight
it.
in it? So, or do
Yeah,
I
do I fight? Do I try to woo this sexy fruit fly lady over here? Like, what do you do as a fruit fly?
Yep.
A lot of that is gone, but you do have at least these kind of simple behavior
Mm.
things happening.
It is remarkable what they have been able to show,
Yeah.
um, and it does show a lot of the power of connectomics as a field, which is allowing us to make these strides forward. We're able to, in the process of attempting to simulate these things, we are learning so much. And in fact, you're right. The demo that Eon Systems didn't have flight, didn't have social behaviors and things like that. However, there have been some community efforts in the time since then that have apparently, been attempting to model some of these things and have had some varying levels of success. Like I haven't. Uh, I've also kind of been working a little bit in that space as well, but I haven't made as much progress as I would like to yet. But certainly watch this space because who knows? I might have something interesting for you on the flight and the social behaviors part. Um, so I'm working on that, but we'll see. But it is a complex behavior. I mean, because you have to orient the fly has to orient itself. It has to make decisions about where to go. Yeah, it has to be upright. All that kind of stuff. That stuff's hard. And like then articulating the wings. I mean, thankfully, all the articulation of the wings happens in the VNC, and um,
Yeah,
like
does Neuromech Fly like have
yeah, Neuromex, I think it does have a actually, no, 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 I don't think it does. Um, like I was looking at its API, and I had a hard time finding anything specific to do with flight. I also had a hard time finding anything to do with like specifically extending just the proboscis. There's some joints that need to be articulated that make up the proboscis, and
Is this extended or not? Can you tell from?
that does not appear extended to me.
Okay, all
I think
right.
it's got
I'll see if I can get this one to
to
extend.
reach the ground.
So
Yeah.
here's another scientific question. If it can't actually fly, is it still a fly or is it just a walk?
uh,
We're just gonna make dumb jokes for the rest of this, by the way.
is a kiwi a bird? Uh, so that's a
At
question
least
for
fly isn't just in the name. Like, come on. I feel like fruit fly is a fruit walk.
fruit fly,
So,
yes. But
uh, so
that's
okay. So we've talked a little bit about like, what's going on now, and the next steps for this. So like obviously like you can kind of continue doing these sorts of things, like mapping out more behaviors and seeing how much of it you get.
yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see, I guess, how far you can get with this approach because, like I said, like you're leaving out so much of the chemistry, so much of the like the ability of the fly to learn. Is it just, oh, it can still make all the decisions and everything? It just like it won't learn from one experience to the next, and so it's not going to like there are certain things that it's just not going to deal with
Well,
in a static environment that's well
mm,
tuned to its current state. Is it still going to be able to do proper decision making and all of that if you kind of graft on a internal state? Like that's the other big thing missing here. And I know you have some
mhm,
thoughts on how to do that by just kind of like grafting on, like hey,
mm,
just track externally
mm,
the things like hunger, and then just tweak the gain, like
mhm.
the kind of approximate a the
So yeah,
actual.
we're doing a lot of approximation, and the approximation is actually it's actually quite you know it's quite good for what it is. I mean, like we're papering over a whole bunch of these very complex biochemical processes with variations in math, and for what it is, I mean, it's pretty remarkable. So with the internal state stuff that I've been doing, it does seem to have some interesting effects. The internal state stuff is still very new. I only managed to get it implemented yesterday, and so I'm still in the process of testing how it apply, like how it's changing behaviors and how it's affecting things like that. But like you can get a certain you can get a certain distance with math alone. The trick, though, to all of this, in fact, the trick to I think simulating anything as complex as, say, a mouse, even if we manage to do, like, cover everything from Hebbian learning, we can do Hebbian learning in the math. So we can, adjust the weights in real time. That does eat up a huge amount of extra computation. But the model that I'm simulating does have Hebbian learning in it. The But then, like, in order to extend that into something like maybe a mouse, I mean, even if we manage to simulate everything on a classical computer somehow, the computational requirements are just going to be astronomical because because of the reliance of so much of the biological computation on chemistry, and chemistry, relying on quantum effects. So I suspect that if we're going to really make any progress with actually simulating something quite significantly complex, like a mouse brain, we're going to need some quantum leaps, you could say, in the integration between classical computing and quantum computing. And because it basically means simulating chemistry, which is like insane to think about. Think about simulating all of chemistry computationally. I mean, that's just mind-boggling. So, but yeah, we're going to certainly have to simulate some of it in order to make that work. To in a simulation that's done on computers. Otherwise, it's simply going to be something that runs so slowly. We'll not see any response from it. Within our lifetimes. So,
Right. And that's like I don't know. I'm curious to see how far this can be pushed with the information that we currently have
Mm,
out of the connectome, because like there's a lot that we don't have. And so like there are basic like, there's still basic science being done on the fruit
yeah.
fly brain. It's not like,
Mm,
oh, we have it all, we have a perfect simulation. Like,
no,
no, we don't know it all. Like we're
no,
still
it's still a
probing
long
and figuring things out. So there's a lot that obviously is
mhm,
going on that is abstracted away. How much can we actually learn from the fruit fly connectome itself, just
mhm.
like looking at the wiring? It turns out like at least something,
Mm, yeah,
but
we
I
can
don't know like how far that gets us in terms of like understanding,
mm,
all the various like learning mechanisms and behavioral switches and context switching and all of that, which I think is um, like when we think about, I just go back to like on the one hand, it's really cool we can have the connectome
mhm.
do it. On the other hand, if we wanted to like just make an artificial life form that could do the things that they're showing this fruit fly doing, it would be trivial, right?
Yeah,
And
I
like,
mean,
whereas like actually simulating like or having an artificial life form that does everything as complex as a real fruit fly, that's a real problem. Like we cannot
mm,
do that.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so
Like,
it's
the biology is made for this. I mean, chemistry chemistry is designed for doing this sort of stuff. I mean, it's we're taking a square peg and we're trying to fit it into a round hole. Now, you can kind of hammer away at it and you'll get it some of the way in there. But I mean, classical computers are just not like they're not designed really for doing biological computations. And not only that, but yeah, we have huge amounts of information that is still missing that we still need to find out, and people are still doing basic science, still foundational, fundamental stuff about understanding the fruit fly. We are so far away from having a complete picture of how that organism works. I mean, like if you just think like, you wrote about the C. elegans problem, and just how far away we are from actually like simulating something that is so simple, it only has 309 neurons. That was, that's still a problem today. We still can't simulate all of its behaviors for very good reasons. But yeah, so we've still got we're upping the complexity, yes, but we we're kind of trying to run before we can walk here.
yeah, yeah. And so I think like it's one of those things that like if you're not kind of into the details of it, it can kind of be probably pretty annoying because it's like you hear these big
Yes,
announcements like, "Oh, we uploaded a fruit fly," and then it's like, "Well, but also we can't
but also
simulate C. elegans." Like there's
yeah,
some disconnect here, and it's like,
just
well,
like
kind of
yeah,
talking about different levels of granularity, right?
mm,
So like the fruit fly, it's very coarse grain what we're doing right now.
mm,
We're getting very generic stereotyped behaviors out of like, if you
mm.
really like hit it the right way with the stimulus.
And the
Where
same is true with the C. elegans as well. We got very primitive, very simple behaviors from
yeah,
that, but it's more complex stuff. We
yeah.
still
Yeah, and I think
still
we're like closer to like it's mostly
mm,
like, oh, we can get any of the individual behaviors. It's just like, oh, it can't actually like switch between
mm,
all the different contexts
right.
and do all the things that, the adaptable robust kind of things that real living beings do. That's
That's
not
right.
really
That's right. So, I mean, like, in terms of mind uploads, like, the day will come, but it's so far away, it's hard to think about. Now, I say that with a lot of confidence, me being like, "Ah, yes, AI is still, 100 years away." But, like, no, really, it's the level of complexity is just mind-boggling. I mean, save for some arbitrary, ingenious occurrence to occur where somebody suddenly goes, "Oh my gosh, I know exactly how this is done in every single way," and manages to do it. Like I don't think that we're gonna see anything like even an attempt at a full simulation of something like a mouse brain for maybe like maybe it'll be another 25, 30 years before we even attempt to simulate that. Um, I'm sure some people will try. before we see a serious attempt, I might say.
Yeah. I mean, I think it depends a lot on what we mean by a serious attempt, because I can
Mhm.
totally see somebody getting, I don't know how, long before we get a connectome of a mouse brain, but I
We're
bet
pretty close.
yeah, like, I know we've done sections of it,
Mhm.
and so, like, we're building up
Mhm.
that muscle, and
Yeah.
so I wouldn't be surprised if somebody, like, once we have it, does some kind of simplified version, even more simplified than the Drosophil
Mhm.
Drosophila brain that we're doing now, and, like, hey, it turns out if you, like,
Yeah.
prune out all of these weaker connections, there are still reserved, like, these really robust connections between smelling food right in front of your face and eating it, right?
No,
Like
yeah.
that.
I can
Uh,
tell you for sure that when that connectome does arrive, and I think it's actually quite close. In fact, I've seen some work done by one of our viewers who's actually viewing this channel. They were showing me just yesterday a complete wiring diagram of the mouse brain, but without annotations. Now, the mouse brain is absurdly complex. It's incredibly dense. It's huge. And so, there's still tons of stuff that needs to go to get even close to the kind of detail that we have in something like Flywire. So that's still, quite some time away. But I'll tell you what, when that becomes available, I will make an attempt, but it won't be a serious one.
so, speaking of attempts, should we move into, like, what do you have now? Because I know you wanted to
This
do.
is very interesting. Something very silly. It's quite silly, but it is a world first, at least as far as I'm aware. So I just want to announce to all of the viewers here that I have actually started making an attempt at not only simulating the fruit fly, but can you see the screen, by the way? Is it showing up?
It's not showing up for me.
It's up. Allow, and then we'll show the whole screen. It's not letting me do it. It was working just a second
I
ago.
tested this. Oh, no.
There.
Disaster. Okay, I'll distract them with the fly will do a dance.
Yeah, I might have to rejoin potentially.
Oh, really?
It's possible. And it says I'm sharing. There we
Oh,
go.
oh, there we go. We got it. We
Okay.
got it. We're good.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you. This is a Roblox character, um, being controlled, or at least to some degree. Oh, she's sleeping. This is being controlled by the fruit fly connectome, and it's controlling this Roblox character. At the moment, it's asleep, which is hilarious. I would have to, in order to wake her up, I will have to restart the server. But I'll give you a bit of a walkthrough of how this works. So basically, what I'm doing is I'm taking a couple of simplified sensory inputs and a couple of complex ones. So the cortex itself is the thing that receives direct information from the eyes, but it doesn't receive direct sensory information from just about anywhere else. Just about everywhere else goes through the VNC, but the eyes do not. And so what I've got here are the two grids, the pixel grids, that basically represent the compound eyes that the fruit fly has. I'm using ray tracing to trace the path of light that will bounce off each of the little bubbles that sits on top of the fruit fly's eyes, and it creates this pixel grid. And this is what it would see. Now, there's also a bunch of these other simplified sensors. So left and right for smell, left and right for sense of vibration, left and right for a few different things like touch and all that kind of stuff. And then what happens is there's a server that is hosted up on the cloud right now that is running this connectome at about 30% of real time speed. And then I'm receiving commands back to Roblox that are then controlling the character. Um, I I had this on pause for a while, so I think it kind of just went into sleep mode. I would, in order to wake it up, I think I would need to. Well, I could try stopping it and then restarting it again like this, and see if that kind of jolts it back out of sleep. Ah, no, she's still asleep. I'll need to restart the server. But my hope is to get this Roblox server live so that anyone can connect to it, and they'll be able to interact with this super simplified fruit fly connectome and just for fun. A couple of things I've done is I've added a whole bunch of these beacons and other sort of objects that emit different senses. So there's sugar, there's different smells that are attractive and repulsive. There are things that vibrate that play specific fly songs. Flies have little songs that they play with their wings. And so I've got little objects that emit those. And sometimes she tends to be drawn towards the things that emit songs. She's quite musical. But yes, this is a world first. I don't know of any other attempt to connect connectome to a Roblox game and control a video game character. But here we are. I'm actually trying to do this.
And so, you were saying, you were telling me that, it will actually, interact with
Yeah, when she's awake, she
and so
interacts.
you're doing that by making it so that, other players actually emit, a
Well, so my plan is that other characters will be able to carry around with them
I see,
sensory stimuli.
I
Uh,
see, okay.
They'll also like, the fly will also see them. It will see them when, with its eyes when they come in close, and so they'll actually be able to bump into the character and cause it to get angry, which is kind of fun. I mean, the way that I'm
Do you
simulating.
actually get a behavioral response out of just like the visual? Because my understanding was what are they called? Eon.
Yeah,
They
eons.
the visual input for their simulation wasn't really doing that much.
Mm.
They didn't find it affected behavior that much.
Well, yeah, what I've found is that it does seem to respond to some visual stimulus. I haven't done a ton of testing of things like the looming stimulus and other thing, but certainly it is sort of it will look around and then it will decide to move forward. Sometimes the movements are a little bit wonky. So there's still a lot of work that I still need to do, but this work is right now ongoing. And at the moment, it is just me. But if anybody listening or watching this wants to be involved and help me connect this thing to Roblox, that would be awesome. I Her name is Jennifly, by the way. She has a name, Jennifly. That's her name. So yeah, watch this space. Definitely a lot more to come. But there you go, world first.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the wonkiness of the behavior, because I think there's
Mhm.
something to be said for, like,
Yeah.
walking through, like, some of the technical hurdles here to better understand what's coming just, like
Oh,
I
she's
was saying
awake.
before, like, what's coming for free out of the brain out of the connectome
Yeah.
versus what needs to be, like, hand tweaked and,
Mm.
all of
Well, what
that.
you can see here, this is an
Oh,
issue that I kind of, so she's
wait.
awake now.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a bit of an issue that I've got with the way that I am interpreting the output of the
Oh god, that's her face? Why did you
yeah. Well, this is default character.
I've never played Roblox, so
Roblox,
this is a
yeah.
little bit of a surprise when she turned around, sorry.
What's up? What's up? She's very happy right now, as you can see. Um, she's probably going to end up accidentally sitting on that chair. The so what's happening at the moment is that there's a slight uh, imbalance in like the amount of output that comes from left and right directional drives, and so basically she's like, I'm still tweaking that. I'm still having to tweak some of the thresholds to try and make it more like the real world demo. And this is one of the things that really annoys me about why Eon System didn't release the code, is because, like, they were able to get it to kind of have a natural-ish looking movement. And I really want to know what their thresholds were for tweaking some of this stuff. In the code. But yeah, this is one of the issues that I'm working through just right at the moment, just as we were going to air. But I didn't manage to get it fixed, which is that, yeah, she'll kind of turn in a circle and go a little bit wonky. So she's not entirely controlling her own movement yet. But she, like, she yeah, she's got a whole bunch of these internal stimuli coming in, and there's internal state. I'm simulating sleep. I mean, that's crazy. So
Yeah, so for, like, things like sleep and hunger, is it just like, just over time those go up and then
yes, that's right. That's right. And then when you feed, it reduces. Now, hunger increases basically arousal. And so it basically increases the arousal of certain neural structures. So the stuff around olfactory senses in particular. But there's also, you can also, I'm also working on a kind of a aggression dominance system. Like we don't really understand, like I don't really have a great understanding of that. But, I'm trying to integrate some social behaviors, and I will get there. It'll take me some time if I
Yeah.
ever get there at all, but
Yeah,
yeah.
it's so interesting because like, it's, a weird combination of, whoa, what's going on now?
I just restarted it
Okay.
just so that
Um,
stuck. Ah, no, she's just
but yeah, it's such an interesting, like, weird combination of, like, some of this is just, like, the kind of stuff that you might put into a normal, like,
mhm.
Roblox,
Yeah,
NPC that you
sure.
wanted to have some dynamic behavior, right? Like,
Yeah.
some of it's just like, "Okay, yeah, we're just gonna give it some states, and we're not gonna worry about how that's implemented."
Mhm.
It's a very simple, system, and then some of it is, like, the movement is being controlled by this, like, way over engineered, in some
Yes.
sense, connectome, right? Like, you do not
Mhm.
need anything this
Yeah.
complicated to do that.
Don't
Um,
use this, for a video game, in the real world because it's just not gonna be
right.
you can do this so much better,
Yeah. So it's just such an interesting, like, mix of those 2. Um,
Yep, that's
yeah.
for sure. Like, I did have her it's like previously to like when until I introduced this bug, she would move towards things that played songs. And that was fascinating to watch. But yeah, unfortunately, I've got a bug and I'll need to fix that. But without removing the actual bug. So yeah.
Yeah.
Jennifer,
Yeah,
good
I
on
also
you,
wonder,
Jennifer.
like
We believe in you.
yeah, you're talking about, like, "Oh, they didn't release the code and stuff." Like, I wonder how much, like, um, th that demo that they showed,
Mm,
like, how many takes did they need to do to get that,
that's a good question.
right? Like,
Okay.
I'm sure they were tweaking things, and then they finally got it. Like, I don't know how robust that
Yeah,
behavior
I
actually ends up
think
being.
I suspect that there's a lot more kind of little cheat codes that have probably been used to make that demo work as smoothly as they were able to show.
Yeah.
And that's, it would be great to know what those were so that maybe we can reverse engineer them and sort of derive some better adjustments to the actual behavior. But there you go. So at some point in the near future, I will make it so that this server will be public and people will be able to join. And my hope is to actually put together over time a connectome zoo. So, we'll have a couple of fruit flies walking around in here. And maybe even we'll add a C. elegans. Who knows? We might get wild.
Yeah. Nice. And so, I know all the code for this is public, right? And so you're actively looking for collaborators on
Mhm.
this?
So what I'm going to do, so this particular update of the code base, I haven't pushed that up yet, but I will and make that public. And then, I'd love to get some collaborators on that. I will post details about how people can collaborate to a chemical mine. And then, yeah, I would love for people, especially anyone who's more familiar with the connectome than I am. It would be fabulous to get your input. But also just, yeah, if you find this interesting and want to take part, it would be fabulous. I don't have any money to pay you, unfortunately, but if anybody else does have money and they want to contribute, I mean, hey, I'm always open.
Yes, I encourage people to throw money at
Please,
me
please
and,
throw money at me.
Nicholas. Um, alright. Awesome. Um, I think it's just about my bedtime, so,
Mm.
I'm gonna, any last words here before we sign off?
Um, the I guess, my 9-year-old asked me, just before, we went to air, they asked me, "Daddy, does it know that it's not real?" And that was a hell of a question. It doesn't know that it's not biological. That much I can tell you. Um,
Does it know
and
anything, though?
whether or not a fruit fly is actually conscious is a very big question. Because if we do manage to actually get these behaviors occurring, even at a simple level, then at what point can we say, like, if a biological fruit fly is conscious, is a digital one conscious as well? That's an interesting question, and one that I encourage people to mull upon.
Yeah, I think it's even more interesting to think about, like, how much of the this is one of the things that I find really cool about this work is that, like, hey, we're showing, what behaviors are robust enough to survive this level
Mm,
of abstraction and
mm,
simplification.
mm,
And one thing you can ask is like, okay, like, at what point, like, we're never going to to contradict what you were saying earlier. I don't think we're ever gonna get to the point, at least with human brains, where we're like, exactly,
mhm,
functional equivalent,
mhm,
between, some simulation and, the actual brain.
mm.
Um, but,
And that's
um
probably the okay position to have, even if
yeah,
it's wrong.
but you can ask, how far along that do you need to get before you get something where, like, it actually is,
Of
conscious?
having phenomenological experience, and that's a question that at the moment nobody can answer for certain, but the answer is out there somewhere. And I encourage anybody who's watching this who's inspired by this, see if you can see if you can contribute something to that conversation and that question, because I think we're reaching a point where, like, actually having an answer to that question might indeed become quite important. So there you go.
Alright. Well,
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me on.
good night, everyone!
And I hope you get back into a real body and out of the cloud at some
Oh,
point.
yeah. Forgot that bit that I opened with.
Escape.
Alright.
Thanks.
Alright. Well, thanks, Nicholas.
Thank you. All right.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.